deep within a cemetery. I will fight, never weary, I wanna be legendary. Till I'm dead and buried deep within a cemetery. I will fight, never weary, I wanna be legendary.
I'll be last place, that's alright, I don't work at a fast pace. I'm a steady horse creeping up straight past it. And once I pass you, no one's getting past me. I'll see you.
And here we have him, Brett Ratten. How are you, mate?
How are you, buddy?
Good, mate.
Brett, Vince, how are you, mate?
It's great to see you. It is an honour for us to have you as our grand final guest.
Yes.
This is the big one.
We're coming up to grand final, yes.
Is Carlton in it?
Carlton's playing Collingwood.
Carlton's playing Collingwood.
I'm predicting it early.
We're all waiting for that.
We don't care if it's against GWS. We just want Carlton in the grand final.
Oh, yeah.
Very true.
It's great to have you back in some way in the Carlton fold. It's been an interesting few years for you in the coaching scene.
Yeah, it has. I think life throws challenges, and when you put yourself in a spot to be the coach, you get a lot of scrutiny, and your role to be the leader of the team and guiding the team, and the more I've looked at it, over time, and you reflect a bit, and I never forget when Neil Craig he got the sack at Adelaide, and I was coaching the Blues, and I caught up with him just to see how he was, as sort of that inner sanctum with coaches. You started to get close, and I caught up with him, and just we had a cup of tea and talking away, and he just said, I don't think it's a one-man job anymore. And I said, I'm only a young coach, but it feels that way. And that was back in 2010.
Yeah. Was it a one-man when you first started?
Not really. Well, yes and no. I think I think the bit is your people around you is so critical, because if you try and do everything, you do nothing. You become a jack of all trades. But
the days of just having that one singular coach that just controls and runs everything is all over.
That's right.
It's been over for a while.
And through David's time, Parko, and before '95, there was probably the part-time element, and players were coming and going. They weren't at the club all the time. Where now it's the players want to touch the coach and have contact hours with him. So that creates difficulties because you've got other responsibilities. But it's taught me a lot about life.
Is it more of a manager's role now? Is it like the senior coach? Like how much is he really involved in the whole thing, because your assistant coaches do a lot, don't they?
Yeah, the bit is you're accountable for everything.
Yeah, of course you're accountable.
Yeah, so the bit is, and I had Ernie Merrick at the Saints as a mentor, fantastic man, and we talked a lot about things around head coaching and some of the things, and he spoke about World Conference. So with the soccer influence, he was over there, and he asked me, what's the biggest thing around your senior coaching with your staff and everything? And I said, one word is trust.
Yes.
And he said, well, that's quite funny. I've just come back 6 months ago from World Conference, and they had all the great soccer coaches there, and their word was trust as well. And the bit is you've got to trust the people around you to do the job, so then you can focus on your strengths as well, because you don't want to be going away from what you do well as coach. That's why you got employed, and that's why the club would put you in there. But when you do, you sort of dilute some of the things that you're good at. So you've got to trust people around you and getting the right people in.
A bit like life then, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
You've got to trust everyone around you. If you try to do, like in a family, if you try to do everything, you kind of fall apart. You've got to trust those people around you to do their job.
That's right, and it's like a team. The Blues this week will be trusting that Cripps does the work inside, and Wiedering sets up the back line, and Charlie's the voice in the front half, and Pitney's and DeConey are trying to control the hit-outs, and the wings are running their patterns. And that's the trust factor.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's what creates good teams.
Well, we'll get more into the coaching a little bit later.
No worries.
But we want to go back in time to when it all began. A young Brett Ratten. Where did you grow up, and where did you go to school, and how did you come to be so invested in football and wanting to play at the highest level?
Well, I grew up in Ringwood early.
Eastern suburbs?
Yeah, eastern suburbs, and then we moved out to Hillsville, and then went across to Yarra Glen. And through that period, I was very fortunate. I went to Lordale Tech. And then and then got picked up for the Phillips squad, which was the under-15s for the Blues, and I was the skipper for that team. So that was.
So you're all right.
Yeah, who we had? Pete, I think it was called Peter Walsh was our coach, and our team manager for that under-15s was Jeff Walsh. Who'd gone through, and so our connection with Walshy was all the way back then, and then I went from the under-15s into the under-17s, played at Yarra Glen, played under-17 scholarship squad at the Blues, and then into the 19s, and
so you came to Carlton first of all in the under-19s?
I did.
Back in the late 80s?
Yep. It was, I was down...
As a what, 16 or 17-year-old?
16-year-old,
right.
Yep. And then I was sort of in and out a little bit, got a couple of games, then played Teal Cup.
Yep.
And had a really good carnival, and from then onwards I just played in the 19s.
Who was your coach back then?
Ross Henshaw.
Ross Henshaw.
Yeah. So
people rave about him as being a really good coach. Was he a hard nut type coach, or?
He was hard. We'd play on a Sunday, and we'd play on the Sunday afternoon, and then by the Monday we had to. We come into training, do recovery, but the recovery was run the Gatehouse run past the Children's Hospital right round.
Gatehouse Street there in Parkville. Yeah.
So that's eight and a bit K.
Yeah, that's a huge,
my word.
Yeah, so we did that the day after, and Ross would always say, "If I beat you, you're in trouble." Well, we've just played a game, before, pushed everything
within 24 hours before,
and then come back and train. But
he brought up a lot of players that you ended up playing senior football with, and some even. A premiership with.
Yeah, that's right.
Back in that late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, Ange and as we're
Ange and here we are at North Seafood Bar and Grill.
On cue, you blokes. He'll love that.
Ching ching.
But so we did that for a few years, and even when we went home, we'd all catch cabs, and there'd be the Northern boys going over there. Cooter and Ange would be catching their cabs, and there'd be me and. Well, Fraser was sort of up in the reserves end, but we met. That's how we met.
Right, you and Fraser, who are good mates still today. Fraser Brown.
Right. Yeah, so I'd jump on the train at Lordale. He went to Yarra Valley. His mum and dad had a bit more money than mine, so he went to Yarra Valley. So at Ringwood, he'd jump on, and then we'd go into the club, and away we went and come home together in the cabs, and he taught me a lot of things, Fraser, not just around the footy field. How to run out of Flinders Street onto Alexander Parade, jump on the tram without paying, and a few things.
Yeah, that'd be right.
I could just see, mate. That were the good old days, man. There were some fun days.
Actually, can I just interrupt you? I've got a little story. Do you remember how Fraser negotiated his contract with John Elliott at that time?
No.
Do you remember what happened there?
No.
Apparently they were having some disputes at the time over contract, and Elliott got involved because they couldn't come to an agreement. He said, "All right, Fraser, what do you want?" He said, "I want the same as Ratten." He said, "Well, if you can guess what Ratten's on, you can have it." And he said, whatever it was, 300 grand a year. He said, "Righto." You got it. Did you tell him what your contract was?
No, I didn't.
I know. I
never got anything near what Fraser got. I got half.
It might have been less than that, but anyway.
It was a lot less. And,
was it?
Yeah, but he might have negotiated up, and John probably didn't even look at my
he probably didn't even know. That's it.
Oh, that's funny. But he's always been pretty clear with money.
Oh, yeah. If you say it with confidence, I reckon he said it with confidence.
Yeah.
John would have said, he must be right then, didn't he?
Yeah. Fraser's done so well in business since his playing days that I reckon if you got the entire 95 premiership team together and added up what they're worth, they wouldn't even come to within a tenth of Fraser. He's done very well in property development, and good luck to him.
He has.
Yeah.
He's taken some risk, and he's been courageous in that space.
He has. No, he's been
like
fantastic.
He was in his football. But anyway, this isn't about Doggy.
No, it's not about Doggy.
You've got to come on the show we'll talk about you.
Yeah, we'll talk about him another day.
This, man.
So let's get back to
I was just going to say, did you always, when you started playing footy, I always find this interesting. When you were younger, did you think you were going to make it? Like, how do you feel?
No, you don't. I think you. for every time you sort of go up a level, or in the Teal Cup scenario, to go and play against South Australia and I was in the last of the just plain Victorian teams.
Oh yes.
So there was no Victorian Metro and City. It was just Victorian.
Yeah.
So out of the 27, I think 24 played AFL footy out of that team. And we were winning. I think Victoria was winning all the time. So there was a bit of a change and shift there. So I was very fortunate. But I sort of, as I said, I played the 19s, and then I got a game in the reserves, and we played in the finals. And then I was about to train with the seniors through that pre-season, and just before I used to get ear infections really bad, and I went to my specialist, and he said, if you don't get this fixed, you'll get an abscess on the brain. So I had to get the reconstruction of my eardrum at 17, and that meant I couldn't do any of the contact pre-season. So I was doing a bit of running.
Wow, that sounds pretty serious.
Yeah, it was.
Does that stress you out now, all of a sudden?
No, it's all fine. And then 12 months of the day, I started in the 19s. They'd say, you haven't done anything, you haven't played with us, you have to go back to the 19s. So I'd start back in the 19s, and by the end you'd be in the reserves. And then, they'd say, well, come and train with us again. And I'd do all that. And then I had to have the operation again, 2 years in a row. And then by that following year, I was still started in the 19s, played right through, but this time, I've nearly got a game in the seniors with 2 games to go. I wasn't on the list.
This is in 89?
This is 90.
90. Well, that was when you did play your first game.
That's right. So what happened was...
right at the end, last game of the year.
Yeah, with 3 rounds to go, I played really well in the reserves, got, I think, nearly best player. And there was no reserves next week. They had a bye.
Right.
And so, I had to go back to the 19s. And played well in the 19s.
Wow.
And I went from the under 19s up into the seniors.
Seniors,
so I leapfrogged the reserves.
I don't think too many people have done that in their life. Gone from an under 19s game straight into the seniors.
Only by circumstance. But,
Yeah,
but I was very fortunate to be at a great club with great people. And
so your first coach in the seniors was Alex Jesselenko.
It was.
In his last game as a coach.
It was.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, last game.
The last game.
Yeah.
Last game of 1990, you got a gig on the bench.
That's right, yeah.
Do you remember who it was against?
Fitzroy.
Do you remember where?
Yeah, it's at Princess Park.
How did it feel running out onto the ground for your first game?
Well, a lot of nerves. And when you run out, you think, geez, I just want to get a kick.
Yeah.
And you know what? Do you remember what your first kick was?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
It was a goal.
I think I had about 3 handballs before, and you don't forget those things.
No.
Mill handballed the ball to me, and I was about 50 out, and I thought, just kick this as long as far as you can towards goal, and somehow the wind must have blown and gone through. And
did the boys all get around you and ruffle your hair and all that sort of stuff?
I can't remember. It was just
probably
before half time, so
right.
It's quite interesting. I've ran into him a few times, and I've just been working at North, but I played on Scotty Clayton.
Oh yes, he was a good player
in the second half. So he retired.
And guess what? You both shared in common that day. You both wore number 40 on your back.
That's right.
That was the only game you wore number 40.
It was,
He was number 40 for Fitzroy.
And anyway,
he's been a great recruiter ever since, hasn't he?
Yeah, and he retired, and that was my first game. So every time I see him, there's a bit of.
So he's involved at North Melbourne, is he?
He is. He's one of the recruiters. Okay. All we did was really shake hands at the start or somewhere there, and see you later. And
he probably said, "Good luck, son."
Last time.
And then I was very fortunate. I probably had, I had to just keep developing. As a junior, I played in a team that I played up as well. I played under 17s and 15s when I was still under 13s and 15s, and I didn't really defend that well. I used to go and get the ball a lot.
Just the ball killer.
And we would get beat by, one game we got beat by 50 goals, and we'd get beat by 30. So it was just go and get as much of the ball as you can to have a bit of fun. And then David, we got players in, but David said after a while, I think you need to work on your defensive side, and we need a small defender. So
because of course at the end of 1990, that's when Jezza moved on and Parko came in. So he was your first senior coach?
He was, full time. And got to train, and I actually didn't have something wrong with my ears. I got to do a pre-season with the group.
Because it's been much publicised that you've had issues with your eyesight.
Yeah.
I didn't realise about your ears. So
yeah, that's why they're so big, I think. Trying to capture every bit of noise they can if they could. But
you're lucky if you're deaf in that one, because my booming voice would probably make you deaf. But,
so anyway, I got to play half forward and bit on ball with David, and then sort of got to a point where Williams and Barry Mitchell and other midfielders came in, so there had to be a shift, and that was a bit that helped change, I suppose, the way I went about football. And
you started in the back line as a back pocket.
I started midfield.
Did you?
And half forward.
Okay. I thought. When did you say? Was it a decision to go down back?
In '94, I went back.
Right.
Well, '93, I went back.
Okay.
And then '94, I started.
So in that '93 grand final, for example, you were playing in defence.
Yes, I was.
Right.
Yeah, and probably that's the greatest. I suppose greatest lesson in my footy career. And I've talked about it publicly about how I got the best seat in the house and didn't contribute. And whether I was overawed, I was always behind in my reactions. I was reactive, not proactive.
But we hadn't made the finals the year before. Do you think, in a way, you can make it to a grand final too early and it becomes an overawing situation for young players like yourself at the time? You would have only been 21, 22?
Yeah, I think maybe for younger players, but we were an experienced group with Kernahan and Bradley and Silvani.
Sure.
But Essendon had it.
That were the baby bombers too. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and maybe there's always sometimes an element of self-belief as well. You start in the midfield and now you're playing back pocket, you're just scrapping and fighting and trying to hang in there. So maybe there's a little bit of self-belief in myself. And then in '94, started the season really well, playing half-back and back pocket, and did a medial ligament, missed 16 weeks.
That's right. That was very unfortunate.
Got back
Is that your first big injury?
Outside of probably the years which were the operation.
Well, the operation.
That game that you did your medial ligament, that was against West Coast.
Yes, it was.
Round 7 at Princes Park.
No, it was in WA.
Was it?
Yes, round 5, I reckon.
Was it?
5 or 6
Okay.
in WA.
You should be reading that Blues.
I'll have to read up on that. So it was in WA that you did the medial ligament,
it was.
right? Okay.
Yeah, my best mate had gone over to play at East Perth. I was going to stay the night.
Right.
He was a bit homesick.
Right.
And I had to say I've got to go back, and I'd never forget it. He's looking there, virtually with tears because he wanted, family and somebody to be around. So
Okay.
How is it? You do that that's your first big injury in football. You can say, how does that feel? Like when you get that injury, does it play on your mind? Like,
it doesn't play on your mind as such as like this is the end and all that.
Yeah.
It's about how do I get back and get involved. I think.
You ever think that? Will I ever get back?
I thought I'd always get back.
Yeah.
But what happened in post my injury was the team won something like 12 or 16.
Yes.
So I sat there and watched, thinking, "Wow,
am I going to get back in the team?" Yeah. In other words, I might get back, but am I going to be good enough to get back in the team?
Yeah. And I've always said this to players. I think for me, there's a few lessons I got along the way. The '93 grand final was one about making sure you contribute for every minute of every game, and then the other one was how do I get something out of this 16-week block when I'm not playing?
Yeah.
And what I did do is I became a student of the game. So I'd stay at the Carlton games for a bit.
Yep.
Carlton would be up by 30 odd points. I'd try and go to another game, even if I got to watch a half of somebody else, and then just look at other players. And I became a student of the game, and that allowed me to be more advanced in when I came back about what this bloke does when we play Melbourne or Sydney or whoever it was. You got to really analyse what they did as a midfield group. So
that is good.
That sort of gave me a little bit more knowledge of the opposition, but also allowed me to keep growing as a player, even though I was just sitting in the stand.
I must have been getting confused because I think the game you came back, the game at Princes Park, was against West Coast as well. That was when Braddles did that little run down the wing. Remember that one? The 1-2 with Andy McKay, and then he kicked the check side kick. And
that was in '95 though?
no, it was in '94.
Was it? Okay.
But anyway, doesn't matter.
Jeez, I
Battle of
need to
stats
study.
here. We're going to battle. Who knows the colour
Doesn't matter.
I'm going to ring Braddles up.
The most important thing is that you came back. That was the main thing, and you were also part of that final series where we went out, unfortunately, in straight sets.
Yeah.
So, how were you feeling then, and how was the team at that stage? You know, you'd just been beaten in the '93 grand final, and then out in straight sets in '94. Was there a feeling of, I don't know, despair almost, that hey, we've got the team, but we're just not putting it together in finals?
Oh, there's, I've spoken about '93, the injury, and then probably the third biggest thing that happened was Greg Williams won the best and fairest in '94.
And the Brownlow medal.
Yes. He'll tell you about that too.
Yes, no doubt.
I'll tell you that.
But he's a great player, Diesel.
Of course.
But what he did do was he got up and spoke at the best and fairest speech, and everybody thought, he was going to just go through the formalities of thank you everybody and all that. Well, he got up and said, "Yep, this is great, but I didn't come here to not win a flag. That's the only reason I come here. I've done this before." Won best and fairest, sort of thing. And he sort of said, I can't play much better. Justin can't, Sauce can't, Braddles can't, Sticks can't, but you next tier of blokes can. And he virtually pushed, McKay, me, Brown, Sexton. Yeah, so is that you, Ange?
I was just going to say.
And he's probably going, and me. I was thinking about that.
Well, Ange and Cooter were just, because they're 12 months under, they hadn't quite, and I don't think he put the pressure on them as, 22, 23-year-olds to take the next step. And that was the part. So he put it on us to do that. And really, I think that was the catalyst of us, being more driven and about grabbing that moment when we can. And
wow, that's interesting.
And probably the other part was, Greg has been such a great player, and he's one of the greatest centremen that ever played the game. But for him, and this is what great teams do, you have to think outside yourself. And in the end of the day, he wanted to be the centreman, but the team was better if he wasn't the centreman.
Yes.
And he came in for visits and just played a part in there, but then went as a forward pocket. And he accepted that, and I think that was part of the growth of the whole team. And for him to come out and say, I need more from you, we need more from you younger blokes, he actually then gave them more responsibility. And that's what created it. And if he would have just stayed in the middle all the time,
he probably would have won another Brownlow, but he wouldn't have won a premiership.
So this feeds into the theory that it's not your best 10 players that wins you a premiership. It's often the other 10 or 12 that make up the rest of the team. So you're only as good as your worst player in your 23.
And I think it's about there's a part to that. It's the key players or the established players. Giving ownership to the others to play their part and roles as well.
And making it their responsibility.
That's right, trust.
Well, it just goes back to that trust.
It does, it all comes down to trust.
But this is where we saw the younger players such as Cooter and Ange, Adrian Whitehead, Camporelli was only 21, we came across. Glenn Manton was pretty young, Brad Pearce. So, they're the ones that really had big years in '95.
Pearcey kicked 50 goals and sort of, wasn't really on a list at Brisbane and got traded to us.
He came out, we interviewed him only last week. He came out of nowhere, he was, but he come in and then all of a sudden he become that third tier for the Blues that year, and it was extraordinary what he did.
Yeah, everyone, I don't know why he didn't boss them, but in that Teal Cup team that I was in, he was in.
Yes.
So he was a very talented junior, but he started at St Kilda, didn't quite work out.
I don't think he was committed. He said he was never really committed enough at the start.
And that's what
That's what it is.
everyone's got their choices in life.
Yeah, that's right.
And
He was too busy mucking around with Shane Warne and guys like that. He
that's
played
it.
with Shane Warne.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
So that's amazing. So so 94. So you played in those, of course, those final losses, right? You know that second final that we lost to Geelong.
Yep.
Yeah. So you know what happened there? 3 players don't come get
Withdrawn from the Geelong side.
Withdrawn. That's the word. Withdrawn last minute. And you know who they were. They were fairly decent players.
Bairstow, Couch and Hockey.
Bairstow, Couch and Hockey.
Yeah. Does that? Do you come on? Because we thought it in the crowd. When we heard it, we go, "Oh, we're in the grand final, right?"
Yeah.
Does that do that to you a little bit?
Maybe a little bit, but you know, you still got Gary Ablett Senior sitting there at full forward, which is you probably say there's an element of that, but I don't know. I think where it was played at Waverley, big open spaces. I think Geelong brought in kids that really ran.
No, and they did. They played well.
And they exposed some of our weaknesses that day. So, and Bradley didn't play for us, so
That's right.
he had the hamstring.
He was out.
Yeah, but
big out.
I think sometimes you've got to lose to understand, you know, the feeling and what it, you know, like we had the pain of 93, 94. I think created 95.
100%.
The commitment, the dedication, the buy-in, the selflessness, and then the trust.
Yeah.
And that's the part that I
Did you notice any change in Parko's coaching style from the 93-94 period to 95? What happened there?
Well, Anthony Stewart came in, which is a sports psychologist, and he spoke about ownership and empowerment, and it was a model that he'd seen overseas and things like that, and he really got the group in to say, you've got the oldest group in the AFL, one of the oldest groups, why not empower these blokes who are, you know, understand the game, work with you closer, and you know, we really got to work with that, and that was Kernahan and those blokes, and then the group grew a little bit more, and I was lucky enough to be brought into that as well.
You're one of the real younger ones in that group, weren't you?
Yeah, I think, but the group sort of started off, I think, about 8 and ended up at about 15. So it was
there were so many leaders, but there were so many great players with really good leadership qualities in that 95 premiership team. I mean, if you look at the back line alone, you've got Silvani and Dean and Sexton and McKay and...
Yeah, I think you're right, but what I do believe is bringing more into that group gave everybody a sense of purpose. Valued, respected by others, and then that's what creates the deeper drive, commitment, and the bonds that got created from it.
It's a challenge, isn't it?
The more you can get in on the boat, you know, on the bus or the boat, whatever analogy you want to use, but that's the part.
Could you sense during that year that we're on here? This is our year.
Yeah.
This is the one we've got to really make it happen.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of key games. We beat West Coast over there. Sporting's hit on McKenna was
second last round that was.
He came back on the ground. He came back on. You reckon he'd come back on today?
No. Well, 2 weeks. That's exactly right. Maybe 3 weeks if they hit. That was huge.
Maybe 4.
That was huge.
But my word. You know, some of the key wins that we had. And that's what the seasons are about: momentum and belief. You strive to be your top 4 team or win the flag, but you know they evolve.
Beating the reigning premiers over there on their home ground by a point in that last game really gave us some belief, didn't it?
It did, and then as we go through, it's sort of like, geez, we're playing some really good footy.
How was your final series in 95? Were you pretty happy?
Before we get the final series, we lost 2 games.
Yeah, we did.
Come on, man.
Yeah, we lost 2.
What's going on there? I know it's always hard to go over to Sydney, but hey, we lost to like the 2 bottom sides. And I know everyone's going to say they improved the years after. They weren't that bad, but they were the bottom side that year. Yeah,
well, Sydney, Carlton's always struggled against Sydney over in Sydney, regardless of where we've been. And you do have your teams that
but they smashed us.
Yeah, they did. They smashed me
and then
too.
The following...
Paul Kelly kneed me in the face.
He won the Brownlow.
I had 4 stitches here and 3 or 4 down here.
Wow.
I was like Willie Nelson with the headband on. And then I went back to the hotel and I think I must have had concussion because I vomited for about 4 hours and Fraser's ringing the doc because we roomed together and you better get up here. He won't stop vomiting, and I can't go to sleep.
He's only worried about sleeping, doesn't he?
Exactly. Can you get rid of him?
And the following week against St Kilda, we were expected to come back, and all of a sudden, half time, I don't think we'd kick the goal.
Yeah, I remember it was raining out there, and
Pretty miserable winter's day.
But I think some of the teams that have won it too. There's been a moment in the season where they get a spike. We whacked Brisbane by 80 odd points, but that was the catalyst for them to, go on to win the flag. So sometimes you need
you need a spanking sometimes.
Well, you need to kick up the backside to refocus, and we had a couple in a row, and I think that galvanised.
After the St Kilda game, I don't know if you remember, but you go into the rooms. What do you say to each other? Like, what's going on? Like, do you go, what's going on? How can we? Like, I don't know. I know what I was thinking.
Well, it's a long time ago now, but I can't even remember.
Yeah.
But I think what we did know is we got. I remember we got smacked on the track.
That week.
Where Parko really got into us on the track, and
do you remember what happened the week after?
we played Hawthorn.
Yeah, they copped
We
it.
absolutely demolished
Someone
them.
had to cop it.
Yeah, but sometimes it's just sort of like you're never as good as you think you are, and you're never as bad as you think you are. So
true.
that part of it for us was we just reset again, realign, do the things.
As a Carlton supporter back then, what gave me a lot of belief that this was our year was that even though we had quite a few games where Kernahan was out injured, Greg Williams had injuries, shoulders and wrist injuries and whatever, we still had soldiers coming in and playing their roles, and we were still winning. We just had this momentum, and we won the last 13 games of the home and away season.
That's right.
And then another 3 finals culminating in a premiership. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that, does it?
Yeah, and it's interesting that the final series so far has been about momentum in the back half of a season.
100%.
And, you watch a couple of teams go out recently, Melbourne and Port, and they didn't have that momentum like they would like. And GWS and the Blues have had the momentum in the second half of the year. So,
and here we are in the top 4.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, so it happens.
Yeah.
So, grand final day.
Nah, Brisbane.
Oh, you want to talk about Brisbane game
I'll
first?
talk about Brisbane.
He really wants to go through every single game here.
Those games, because I remember, I'm at those
qualifying
games.
final,
I remember
remember?
the qualifying final, that first final, and you're playing 8th in those.
Yeah, in those days
They were actually the form team.
And they were a bit like... what you just
well,
said.
they came
were
in with
building,
momentum.
and
Yes.
they just got in, but they'd won something like 7 of 10 or 8 of 10 or something.
To make it.
To make it, yeah.
They had like Merritt,
Robert Walls
who
was last year's coach of Brisbane.
I think Merritt took nearly mark of the year or mark of the week with about 30 seconds to go
kicked the goal.
on my head.
Oh, I didn't know.
I back with Craig Lambert and just felt bang and thought, Big Roger, he's taking a hanger on me.
You did too. But so that one there was another one.
We escaped there, didn't we, really? I mean, we really dodged a bullet with Brisbane.
I think,
it was in the balance at
18
one
points,
stage.
I reckon. It was a nail biter.
Who came to the top in that last quarter?
I can't remember.
I think it was the Cooter man. I think he stood up, took a few big marks.
Parko shifted Cooter to full forward and kicked a couple of goals in the last quarter.
Yeah.
Got us over the line.
I just remember trying to get the ball our way.
That's it.
We just didn't look ourselves that day. We just did not look like the Carlton side that had been so dominant in the previous 13 games.
Yeah, but
It was almost like we were nervous because the finals in the previous 2 years, we'd gone out in straight sets in '94.
I think
And
that's the
we just didn't
final.
look ourselves.
But that's finals though, isn't it? Like when you go through, it's sort of the momentum, you look at the games that have been played now, you reflect back and say, oh yeah, we can't beat Melbourne, but Melbourne had their chance to win that game.
That's right.
And really, when we played Melbourne and lost a game where we kicked 8-15 to their 12-6 or something, and you go, geez, if we would have just done this, but that's somebody's story. That's their narrative of how they got there and won, and sometimes you need a little bit of luck, but
But we got through.
Give Brisbane some credit. They were
they
they're
were
playing well. Yeah.
They were good.
A lot of people thought that they were probably the second best team going around at that time.
Yeah.
But then week after we played North in a prelim at boggy old MCG. That was a terrible state of the ground that night, wasn't it?
Yeah. I didn't mind it.
Oh, you didn't. You didn't mind the boggy conditions, did you?
Well, it kept him about my pace for longer. Then I could catch a few more.
Fraser Brown didn't like it too much. He did an ankle that night.
He did, and Diesel got knocked out.
Diesel got knocked out, yes.
Yeah.
Fraser was furiously trying to get his ankle right for the grand final.
Yeah, he was. It's
What was it, in a hyperbaric chamber or something?
That was fairly new too those days, wasn't it?
yeah, he was going down the beach and all that, and we got through, and
Probably got jabbed a bit before the game, I would think.
Yeah, he did, he was struggling, and even even coming to Thursday, he
Touch and go.
Yeah, he's touch and go, but he said to me, he goes, I don't think I'm right.
I said,
and I said, just make sure you run out there, mate, because we're winning.
Yeah, that's it.
And he goes, oh, you reckon? I said, just get out.
So he pumped himself up with painkillers.
And he got out and did his bit. And
He did, and he played his role.
Yeah, that's
he
right.
Did all right.
And he was a great contributor through the 95, and
He was.
had a great career too.
Yeah,
but-
he needed to be there.
I'm rapt that he made it because
So do
he deserved to be there.
Yeah, that's right.
So let's take us into the grand final. The feeling in the rooms as you're running out onto the ground. How are you feeling then?
So different to 93 personally,
Yeah.
and I think there's a lot about self-belief and that as a player, and probably in the 94 and what was I trying to become as a player and all that, and I had a lot of belief with Kenny Judge coming in and
Yes.
moving from this back line back into the middle.
Yeah.
It just gave me a lot of confidence as a player, and my pre-game and that wasn't about going there and hope. It was actually going there to say, what am I going to do and influence the game?
Yeah.
So there's a different mindset, and I think that's part of the journey.
Yeah.
I think you can't just go from this young player and have the brains and the confidence and the poise of a 28-year-old. You've actually got to go through and live it, and that makes you a better player, I think, too. So,
Yeah,
You had a good game.
Yeah, we all did. I wouldn't believe it's quite...
Who did you play on? Do you remember?
Paul Couch.
Paul Couch.
The great Paul Couch.
Yes.
It's sad he's passed
God
away.
rest his soul.
But I played on him a few times through the year. When we played against him, Parko would send me to him, and in
The two number sevens.
Yeah,
It was always a great clash. You had some great clashes with number sevens. Paul Couch, Scotty West, guys like that.
Yeah, it was.
Anyway, back to Couchy. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it was. When I sort of that 95 was more to use my starting point on my opponent from David's direction, and just work off him and build your game from there. So to play on Couch and learn from some of these great players as well. How to go about it, and he's a Brownlow medalist and one of the stars of the game.
Well, we ended up winning the game pretty comfortably, didn't we? I mean, half-time, 10 goals to 3, you must have been feeling pretty confident we got this in the bag, without taking anything for granted.
Yeah, I actually, it was on the other night. I've watched it once since the time.
Really? Only the once?
Only the once.
Wow.
And the other night I was looking for a doco and on KO, something to do with sport or something for the kids, and there it was, and I said, let's watch. So they pretty interested. They're pretty
sat down and watched it.
Yeah, they're pretty interested for the first.
The kids?
Yeah, maybe quarter, and by the second they're all on their phones. So we fast forward into half time, and I said, "This is what wrecked Dad's second half." When there was a bit of a biffo, and Ange
Yes, that was at half time, right on half time.
and then I got pinned underneath, and I couldn't breathe. And I was stuck under there, and I was still wrecked halfway through the third quarter. Where
it was Ange and Billy Brownless that had a bit of a scuffle on the boundary line.
we watched that, and then Will said, "Can we go to when you win?" So we looked at the last.
So you fast forward two quarters.
That was as close as I got. So, but but it was a great feeling, and I think when you're in the moment, you sort of say, "This is what we've played for." But I think
Relief.
yeah, I think so. I think footy can be a bit like that.
Yeah.
You sort of,
Because the pressure's right on.
especially coaching. It's you're relieved when you win, and you really get a kick in the guts when you lose. So that's the part that post the game was about. The reflection of 94, 93, what we had to go through, and the hard yards, and it was 3 years in the making, that game.
It was,
and that victory.
It was,
and the players that we brought in to try and achieve this, Spalding and Rice, Clappe, they were all from other clubs. Piers,
Camporeale.
and then the draft of Camporeale. So we had the trade component and then also the drafting. So
it all just felt like it came together perfectly.
Well, it
on
did.
one
That year there, listen, that was one of the great sides to ever play the game. That whole side. I know you're part of it, but I'm telling you from an outside, man, like there
wasn't one player
had from front to back.
Yeah.
Gee.
There was not one player that you would say was a weak link in that side. There was no weak links in that side at all.
Midfield, forward line. Yeah, one of the great captains.
Yeah, he's a great captain.
You know, we got fullback of the century in the side. Like, you believe it? Like Greg Williams. You know, you of course. You know, everyone. I don't think everyone forgot, but you won best and fairest that year.
I was going to say.
Yeah,
it's one thing to win a best and fairest, but to do it in a premiership.
I always say if you win a best and fairest
very special
year, that's a special play.
Yeah, it is.
You had a great year in '95. Really, really good year.
Yeah, I did. You know, I think Bradley had a great year too.
Yeah.
A number of players had great years.
Yeah, and maybe because of where I'd come from to improve, you sort of get a few more accolades in that year over a bloke that. You know, Bradley's just churned that out every year.
I know.
It's serious.
We probably just forgot, like Bradley, that's expected.
That's right, exactly. You become complacent with what they do each week. So, but it was, I think, you know, you go through the year and talk about evolving as a player and the making of you and the belief, and then I think I earned the trust of those other players as well. So,
yeah, that definitely helps.
The final siren goes.
Yeah, well, just before the final siren, Geelong kicked a goal.
Yes. Yeah. They kicked the last 5 of the game, actually. And they still lost by 10.
They kicked a goal, and Cooters puts his head down, and I go over and give him a hug and said, "Don't worry, mate, we're 60 points up." He was flat, and I'm like, "Let it go, mate. Let it go." About 2 minutes to go.
I don't think anyone cared about those last 5 goals. We were 90 points in front at one stage, and we ended up winning by 60, but who cares? You've got that game in the bag.
Yeah.
So, do you remember who was on the ground with you from outside the playing group after the final siren went and some people rushed out onto the ground? He used to sponsor you.
John Redmond.
Yeah. Yes. My former vice president at the Carltonians, one of his proudest moments ever.
Yes.
Running out onto the ground. He's got photos of it.
Yeah.
With you.
The great thing is, the great thing about winning it is, you know, it's not just about the playing group. It's this whole ripple effect on, you know, the staff, the sponsors, you know, the people that are around, the supporters, and people have gone through the journey and the year. And you say the players are living every bump, so is everybody else. And the bit to be, I suppose, united as a club,
rejoicing together.
Exactly. Yeah. The song captures everybody.
Yes,
and you're a part of it. And that was the great thing about it. Going back to Princess Park, and we went
afterwards.
We went out there, and never forget it. We're in the bus, and they said, "Oh, there's a divvy van putting someone in the back," and they go, "Oh, Fraser, that's probably your brother." Funny thing, it was.
It was.
It was. We found out later it was.
Oh, jeez, that doesn't surprise me. Yeah, well, I know Johnny well, and. You know, him and his lovely wife Marlene sponsored you for quite a few years, and they were just so rapt to see you be part of a premiership team.
Oh, and that's the bit around the friendships that are built. You know, you got John and Marlene, and you got Howard Cotton, and still all still speak today, and you know that's the beauty of. There, it's the footy brings you together, but it's the friendships of the footy, and that's what life is. And life is really about creating memories.
Yes,
and you know,
it is,
and enjoying the journey along the way. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the hard bit. We all look at is success a destination where we want to get to? No, it's the journey to get to success.
Oh man, I've been saying that this year. Like everyone enjoy the journey because that's the.
Do you know
that's right, and it's hard to win.
Yeah,
the game is hard to win. One team wins, and you can be so close and do so much right for a long time, and still not get there.
Yeah.
We're coming off the back of the sad passing of Bron Barassi.
Yes. Look at something.
Are we right, Rocco?
Yeah, keep going.
Okay. I couldn't help but think of the saying that I heard in the last few days because of all of Ron Barassi's famous quotes. And he was actually quoting someone else who said, in fact I think it was Norm Smith, who said, "Success is not what you achieve, It's what you achieve with what you've got. And, where people sometimes achieve a lot more than others, but they could potentially achieve so much more. And then others have got very little to try and achieve with, and yet they maximise what they've got.
Yes, that's right.
Do you feel like you maximised your talents on the football field?
Yeah, I think so. I think
because you went on to win another 2 Best and Fairest in '97 and 2000.
Yeah.
And you All Australian in 2000, 2001. That's fantastic achievements.
Yeah, they are. I sort of reflect. I think.
I mean, individual achievements, but nevertheless
I
achievements.
think you reflect back to sort of say, could have I done more? And I think you always look and say, I could have maybe done a little bit more and done some things different when you look back on it. But you think, I was very fortunate to be at a great club with great players. And I think what can happen is you just look at what you did individually, but it's the other players that allow you to become
100%.
what you are. And if you don't have, my ability was to get the ball inside, but I couldn't run like Camperelli and Braddles and all this. So if I couldn't get the ball out to them to influence the play and their leg speed to get out and then pass the ball to Kernahan and Pearce and so forth, that would have. Yeah, it would have just fell down. They would have just said that was a handball out and the ball, that play was scrappy. But because of their expertise to kick the ball and do other things, and I think we all complemented each other, and I think that allows people then to play to their strengths. 100%. And I was allowed to do that.
Yeah, 100%, man. Bring in other players, bring them, help other players into the game, make them a better player.
That's the team.
Yeah, but they make you a better player.
And then they make you a better player too, correct?
Yeah, that's right. It's not, I don't think it's one. I think it's both.
Yeah. Now, after you win that grand final, well, first of all, you just party hard.
Pretty solid.
Yeah, I reckon it would have been solid because we did, so I can imagine you guys, how you felt. It must feel like did you just go overseas trip?
I didn't. I just bought a house, so they went overseas.
Oh, you missed out on that.
And you signed for a mortgage.
I went to a function, and they had one in Melbourne for the people that were still left. There was a few of us, so
yeah. So, and then after that, do you think that now we're going to win a couple here? Is that the belief in the side? Because you just won it. You've still got you've got a great...
The plan would have been, let's try and go back to back, true?
Well, the idea was to put ourselves in a position. And I think halfway in the year, I think we were 9-2.
Yeah.
And going really well. Then the injuries hit, and by the time we got to that final series, I think...
We limped in.
Yeah, we probably had 15 blokes going through the doctors' quarters before games. And
we finished 5th on the ladder.
Yeah, we just got there and we got whacked by West Coast and then we got whacked by Brisbane. I think Brisbane kicked a goal in that final just before half time to go 2 points up, and then we didn't score and they ended up winning by 10 goals. So,
Would you believe 97 points, a record losing margin for Carlton in a final?
Was it?
Yeah. Yeah, up at the Gabba. Yeah. It was huge. But anyway, we were done. We were finished.
Whether it was 57 or 97.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. A bit like the grand final that we won, whether it was 90 points or 60 points, it didn't matter.
Exactly. So,
but I mean, you're right, we copped a lot of injuries, but did we feel like at that stage things were sort of slipping and guys were getting a bit older again?
I think it highlighted we were getting older as a group, and we probably needed to regenerate the list in different ways.
Interesting. I'd like to get your feeling on this. When older guys like, say, Kernahan, and those guys that are in their 32, 33 years of age mark, Peter Dean, they get a premiership like 95, are they still just as driven to get the next one? Or do you think there's a little bit of, I'm pretty satisfied, thanks, and my belly's full?
I think when you get to that age, you sort of know when your time is coming. And the bit is, I don't think it's around...
And it's not just Sticks, by the way.
No.
Spalding and Dean and Madden and...
I don't think it's around winning a flag. I think you lose the competitive edge each week.
Yes.
And you can start to feel that coming in. And I'm only talking from my experience.
Yeah.
That I started to lose a bit of that.
Okay.
The bits was, midweek training was like... young blokes coming at you and all that. You're like, yeah, come on, let's go. Let's fight, have contested ball, and you're into it and you're going for it. And then as you got into your 30s, and there was a moment there where you're like, Yeah, go over and do it with him. And you feel like you've only got so many whacks, or you're not up for using your hits up on midweek when you think save them for Saturday.
No,
that's a bit of a telltale. It's telling you a little bit of a story about maybe I'm getting a little bit closer.
And you lose that. You lose 5%, and that's huge, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it could be 1%.
And then once you get onto the ground, that's huge.
And yet you were only 25 at the time, 96, weren't you? So you'd won a premiership at 24 years of age, and yet you were also telling us now that you lose that little bit of an edge when you win a premiership.
No.
You're talking about them.
No, I'm saying when I got older.
Oh, when you got older. Oh, right, okay,
I'm not talking about I did that in 96.
No, his best. It was winning.
Well, that's what I was saying. You won best and fairest in 97. You were still young.
When
you get to 30,
sorry.
Around that space, you sort of, that was a bit too, like when I was that, 95, 96. I was, if there was any drill, I'd go for Bradley, I'd go for Williams.
You want the best.
I want the best, and I wanted to challenge. And then when that came the other way, when kids were coming at me, trying to...
They were coming at you there.
That's right, but the part was I was up for it. And then they got to a point where I was sort of like, go and play on here. You try and look after yourself.
I know what you mean, sorry. Because, you really, I guess the best and fairest in 95 would have elevated you in everyone's... view anyhow, but you took more of a leadership role after that too, didn't you? You became an integral part of the team, even though you still had experienced players around you. You were considered one of the real leaders in the team as well.
I think the bit is around the self-belief, and I think to be a leader you need to get your own backyard in order, and that means you have to play consistent footy. You're never going to be the best every week, but you're going to be consistent. So you might have a downer, but you always bounce back. And that was the part that I had real confidence that I could lead and tell people what to do, because you can back it up yourself a bit. You might not get best player each week, but you know that you're performing at a pretty solid level each week, and that's how you could help influence others. And that gave me a lot more confidence to do that.
Well, let's fast forward a little bit through to late 90s. We went through a bit of a patch out of the finals in 97 and 98, but all of a sudden in 99, we're back up there, and we make a grand final. Unbelievable, out of nowhere.
Yeah, it was. The Essendon game, that was an amazing game, and looking back on it, we probably had our grand final the week before. And
now that you look back at it,
we did everything in there to win, and probably fortunate. We talk about Essendon kicked so many points. But that's part of the game, and you see it happen.
I'll never forget the scoreline. 16 goals, 8 to 14 goals, 19. And guys like Mark McCurry missing from 20 metres out when you 99 times out of 100 he kicked that goal.
Yeah, that's right.
Well.
Things sometimes just go a certain way, don't they?
They do.
It was meant to be that day for us.
Yes, it was. And then we play North, and Murphy does a knee, Brown pops a shoulder.
Because we started that game well,
We did. The second quarter, I think we kicked 1-5. And they kicked 3 straight.
We couldn't get on the ball.
Corey McKern kicked two
and he
late
was the difference, I reckon. Not he was the difference, but it's almost a turning point, that Corey McKern goals.
I reckon he kicked 2 goals with 3 or 4 minutes to go in the second. And that was where we sort of had virtually 6 shots at goal to 1 or 2, and then they went and kicked 2 goals, and they won the quarter where we'd played some good footy.
I remember feeling really flat at half time in that grand final, thinking, oh God, it's not looking good for us here.
And then,
did you feel like that at half time, like you'd been a bit deflated, or?
A little bit. I think the disappointment of not making the most of our opportunity, but as we just said, you've got to make your own luck. You've got to.
We had the same amount of scoring shots as they did.
Yeah, I know.
12-17 to 19-10. They won by 35 points. Just goes to show you've got to put it through the big sticks. It's one of the most underestimated skills in the game, isn't it? How important it is to kick it through those 2 big sticks. 6 points versus 1.
That's right.
It can make such a massive difference to all the hard work and effort that a team goes through to get goal scoring opportunities. And if you don't put it through, it must be very deflating when you kick poorly for goal. But anyway, we lost the 99 grand final, but we certainly had a memorable prelim. Probably one of the best ever.
With Carlton people, I'd say the flags are here, and that prelim's probably just.
Well, last week's win against Melbourne I reckon we'd have to go very,
as far
very
as the
close.
feelings
Not
go.
quite as good because it doesn't get you into a grand final, but for excitement and having to do it differently. Because against Essendon we were holding on in that last 5 minutes, whereas against Melbourne we had to kick a couple of goals to get over the line.
Yeah, I think where Melbourne sat and where Essendon were the juggernauts.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the bit that was David and Goliath in a way,
And a traditional rival.
and traditional,
And the win gets you into a grand final.
that's right.
yeah?
But
That's
I'm not downplaying what happened
No,
at
no.
Melbourne.
No, I
Dead
don't.
and buried deep within a cemetery. I will fight, never wary. I wanna be legendary. Till I'm dead and buried deep within a cemetery. I will fight, never wary. I wanna be legendary. I wanna be legendary.
Coming out of the gate, I'll be last place, that's alright. I don't work at a fast pace, I'm a steady horse creeping up straight past it. And once I pass you, no one's getting past me. I see people here